Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to BioTouch workshop on post-traumatic stress syndrome or PTSD. Hi, everybody. My name's Paul,
Good evening. This is Bev.
and our special speaker tonight is Jodi Scott. She's the founder of, believe it or not, greengoo.com.
Yay.
Just the thought of that, I can't wait to hear what it is.
I love it.
Yeah, we're going to let Jody just take this away. If you have any questions for her during her presentation, just put it in the chat line. We'll pass it on to her. And we can't wait to hear what you have to say, Jody. Thanks for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me. It's so wonderful to be with y'all.
Thank you.
Take it
All
away.
right. All right. Well, my name is Jodi Scott. I am the founder of Green Goo, and that is a plant-based first aid company that my sister and mom and I started together. I have a master's in health psychology and was pre-med and was practicing psychoneuroimmunology, which is really looking at the relationship of the mind-body medicine. And my sister is a certified herbalist and midwife. And that's really what prompted us to start with the green goo. Now, fast forward, a decade later of expanding products into retail and so forth, we started a partnership very much full circle. And we are studying PTSD and on treatment resistant PTSD with our vets and servicemen and using psychedelics and psilocybin. And so what's been really fascinating for me is that when I started my educational journey and training resident physicians on the biopsychosocial model, which was very much before integrative medicine was what it is today, and trying to help these physicians look at the patient in a more holistic way and say, okay, what can we do to remove barriers to help improve the commitment? And perhaps there's other, mental illness or social hurdles that are preventing them from really taking their medication or changing their lifestyle and diet. And now today we're seeing, that in this holistic way. And so, fast forward to this moment and really studying PTSD and what we have found. So, PTSD is obviously a mental health condition that is caused by experiencing or witnessing a traumatic event. And what's really interesting is sort of the changes that happen physiologically when you have when you have a traumatic situation, right? So you see physical changes in your brain. Your amygdala, which is an area that is associated with your fight or flight, actually becomes enlarged and hyperactive. And so what happens is you get this flood of hormones, this, fight or flight emergency hormones, which then stimulate other areas of your brain that actually impact your memory areas of your brain, and it changes your ability to communicate those memories. And then you have another place in your brain, which is your hippocampus, and that becomes hypoactive. So that actually isn't functioning in the way that it should. And what's interesting about that is it it puts you in a situation where you can't manage your emotional reactions. So how does that get exhibited? How does that exhibit behaviorally, right? Becomes anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, insomnia, nightmares, flashbacks, wanting to avoid certain situations. And it's really a visceral, uncomfortable experience. And it's not just for the individual. What we find with PTSD is how it impacts relationships, how it impacts the family. And we were talking about this earlier before we went live, was the prevalence of PTSD and how common it is. We're working with vets, and that might be an area where more people will become educated and informed on PTSD, but it's so common. I mean, there's studies that talk about, one in four people have been a part of abusive relationship, whether it is their parent or whether it's in their actual couple relationship, or that they witnessed a parent being abused. I think the statistics are one in eight have a parent who has been in AA. And so you start to see, this prevalence of PTSD. And there's a really great resource that I suggest that people look at, which is The Body Keeps Score, which I think is really relevant for today's discussion in the sense of your body keeps track of this, right? And that's unfortunate because, our survive brain that we have kind of evolved into, remembers things very easily. But there's also an opportunity here to understand how your body keeps score and how you can fix that, there's different things that you can do to interact with that. And so, one thing that I think is very interesting in the sense of touch and what we're going to be talking about today, in the sense of there are opportunities for us to be able to utilize touch, because when you're having this visceral experience that you don't feel like you have control over, your body wants to, your we'll call it your your normal brain wants to push it down, wants to shove it down. But your survive brain, which we've evolved into, says, no, I was designed to be reactive. That is how I help you. And so I'm excited to learn more with you all today, and how we may be able to take things like touch. So touch has been shown to, if you have an overreactive nervous system, that you can touch in certain places that give you put your feet on the ground, have a positive experience that can then help you get grounded in a situation. Or, oftentimes when people are having flashbacks or they're in a disassociative situation, they may not feel their fingertips, they might not feel their body. And you can use different exercises to touch to help bring you back into that moment. And I'll tell you a story that was very interesting. We had a patient who was Jane Doe, or excuse me, not a patient, a customer of Green Goo, who was Jane Doe #1. And she was the first person pulled from the World Trade Center, and had incredibly, I mean, her injuries were enormous. And she became addicted to opioids. And she called us one day and said, this is the only product that is helping her through her opioid withdrawal. And she was making a very intentional effort to start working back. And she's like, is there any way we can get a bigger quantity, a bigger bottle of this product, this Green Goo pain relief product? And I was like, absolutely. So we did that. But what was interesting for me was to take that relationship of touch and how she's having this very visceral experience. And I'm like, there's no way that the arnica flower, now mind you, like, we do a very special infusion process that yields high amounts of the medicinal properties from the plants. We make most of the ingredients ourselves at our manufacturing facility. So you're getting high concentrations, but I'm going, there's not enough arnica flowers in here to navigate an opioid withdrawal. But what I recognized was that, having things that were cool, like creating a cooling effect or a warming effect, was giving her, to that point, that disassociative experience, so she could feel in different places as she was navigating these physical withdrawals. And there's studies that obviously show that by creating a calm touch feeling, you can reduce cortisol, you can reduce inflammation, which then has a calming effect on the brainstem. And so, we have so much to learn with PTSD, and obviously, the memory component. And obviously, we're still in the early stages of understanding how the psychedelics work with PTSD. What I will say that I'm thrilled to be a part of and observe is that we're using psilocybin as a micro and macro dose for PTSD. And they come in, with this treatment resistant. They've been in therapy for a very long time and it's not working, but they come in as insomniacs. They may be abusing alcohol. They're overweight. They don't leave the home. PTSD isn't just that flashback, that visceral emotional experience. It's all of the other emotional experiences that come with that. And what we're finding after, a microdose is an 80% remission rate, which is phenomenal in terms of having years and years of therapy. But then they're also, losing weight, and they're sleeping, and they're going to concerts, and they're having friendships and relationships. And so I'm really excited to see where this research will take us. And for me, it's just a very full circle moment in terms of, my roots in health psychology and spending time in plant-based medicine. and now really being able to explore the mind-body relationship, with PTSD and other plant-based solutions. So let's talk about it. Lots to unpack there.
So if anybody out there has any questions for Jodi, just post them here. Yeah, so just back for a moment here, you talked about, so does the plant-based medicine along with touch or one or the other, and you said they were in therapy, do they tend to be able to open up more in their talking therapy compared to what they were able to do before they started doing uh, the medicinal
The
plants or
psilocybin.
touch or
Mhm.
things like that? Did the therapy sessions get deeper too?
They did. And, the science in the neuroplasticity is really where we're seeing the most neuroactivity. And when you see a brain scan when someone is under the influence of a microdose while accompanied by the therapy, that therapy is just that much more impactive. And that's why that controlled setting is really important. And then you can have other interactions, having touch therapy. There's red light therapy. There's audio, visual, and really bringing in your senses. And what we found too is, we've got this survive brain, right? This is the thing that has been most developed. And quite honestly, it's what we see in marketing prey on us more, prey on the dopamine and the survive brain. But by doing different sensory activities, and y'all could probably, attest to this, you can build other parts of your brain. And going back to that book, the body keeps score. When you do these other, whether it's focusing on your auditory or focusing on your visual or touch, you can develop other areas of your brain to help you navigate a visceral experience and have more control. So it's like that one traumatic experience, if you can, have a positive experience times five, it starts to reduce that reactivity that you're having, that overreactive nervous system. And that's the beauty of some of the psychedelic research that we're seeing in that neuroplasticity, is that you're more open, and your body, that sort of thrive brain, if you will, we call it the sage brain, starts to take over instead of your survive brain, which has served us well. I mean, we need the survive brain, but we have an analogy that we use, which is the hot stove is important. We don't, we need to have that reaction, but don't keep your hand on the hot stove, you know. And it's being able to recognize that and being able to pull away. And there's exercises that you can do that.
So, Jodi, I have a quick question. You had mentioned, I would like you to maybe expand a little bit, and then we'll tell you why later. But you had mentioned the levels of cortisol and inflammation in relation to touch. Could you just kind of explain that a little bit more? Because you really got my attention on that one.
Well, and it's for me, being in the skincare, you know, science and industry, this is an area that I have a great passion. And it wasn't until what I saw around 2016 timeframe when, behavioral medicine research started to work with dermatology, the Journal of Dermatology, to identify that mindfulness had an impact on skin. So there's actually studies that show that different mindful activities can reduce eczema inflammations and things like don't multitask. I mean, obviously in these studies, there are controlled settings, but how they measured that was by the reduction of cortisol, which then impacted inflammation. And so what we're finding is that you can do that obviously with touch and having that reaction in the brainstem and so forth. And so what I find fascinating is my sister and I, when we do product development, is bringing a more holistic approach to our product development. So we're now using Ayurvedic practices and essential oils, because if your mindfulness can have that much of an impact while also, bringing these wonderful ingredients into your body and having that systemic reaction, which is very synonymous to touch and having the same physiological reaction in your body. you can have some really positive impacts. And so since then, we're starting to see more studies come out. And of course, technology is advanced in order for us to, be able to take those data points and see the results that we're getting versus just anecdotal research.
Right. Wow. So interesting.
So we had a question. Somebody says, so, and the question is, so with time, you're saying the nervous system unwinds?
I would say unwinds might not be the right term, but I think that's what we would say how that feels. Is it just it's maybe it's overridden and other neural pathways become stronger. And there's obviously a pattern of habits. You have a habit and then our body wants to take the path of least resistance. And that's part of our fight or flight loop, if you will. And so what we need to do is rebuild the path and then make that the primary path. And so that's why things like touch, repetition, why therapy works, combined with medications. But I think that's what the beauty is of what we're finding with the psychedelics is because your brain becomes more stimulated in the areas that we can guide you, which then creates the pathway as a more dominant pathway faster, if that's helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
Yeah.
I mean, and repetition is the difficult part
Yeah.
of it, just especially with simple things we're finding, whether it's
Right.
touch, a medicinal product, we hear it all the time. I'm sure you probably do. How can it be so simple? I mean, you know, so
Truly. Well,
yeah,
and you think of the traumatic event that happens and how quickly that becomes um, the memory that's in charge. And I
Yes.
think, what's another, benefit to understanding these alternative modalities is that we may be challenging what has been traditional neuroscience for, the last 2 decades.
Yeah.
We're seeing a change in what systemic pain really means and is experienced because, look at the opioid practice, which is you have pain and we give you something to diminish, to push it down. And what we find is the more you push it down, the stronger it comes back. And there might be a different approach of bringing it up and putting it out. And so it'll be a really interesting next, 2 to 3 years to see more of resources going behind this research and how we may, you know, modify our our different treatments.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's exciting time. I know my
It
wife,
is.
40 years ago when she started to remember her trauma and her abuses and things like that. There was nothing in those days. And I was just talking to someone today who finally there's more counselors out there, more people like yourself, meeting people to help us through our traumatic experiences and letting us love it. I think that's what it's about, whether it's a medicinal or a touch. It's about loving that part of ourselves instead of fighting against it. Because it's part, like you said, it's part of us,
It
you
is,
know?
and I grew up in the military. My dad's military, my grandpa, my brother, and the word PTSD just kind of came out when, I think I was in junior high or high school, and it was not a term that people were not only comfortable talking about or understood, but they were shamed for it. And, soldiers had to hide from it. And, it was not uncommon for me to hear of suicides in the military at a young age and how to navigate that with the families and then the families themselves having trauma. And, it was like, what's wrong with me? Is what I would hear from, my dad going, why does it happen to one person and not to another? And, why can't we not shame it and find the resources? And so what I'm really grateful for now is that we're not shaming it, but we're also finding solutions. And perhaps we'll get to know this better, that we can find practices before sending, our vets and service men and women and, people. I mean, look at when COVID happened, all the trauma for the people who were in the medical treatment, and finding tools before we send them into battle. Um, and then, yeah, so I'm very
Right
passionate about
on.
this space, and
And we
Oh,
feel your passion, Jodi.
oh
I
yeah.
mean, it touches my heart to hear you
Yeah.
and what you're
How
presenting.
excited. I'm so
Yes.
excited and really grateful for the work you and your mom and your sister are doing. It's really giving us hope.
Yeah.
I
thank
think
you.
this is something that we all need right now, you
So
know.
again, Jodi Scott, if you want to get hold of her, if you have personal questions, if you want to find out about her particular medicinal products, greengoo.com, you can't forget that one.
I love it.
And
Thank
you
you.
can personally go to her website. There's a contact page. Ask her some personal questions. Jodi, definitely heartfelt, and I think a lot of people can be helped by the work you're doing. So, and we
Yeah.
thank you for sharing all the info too about
Yes,
PTSD.
wonderful
Yeah.
information.
Well, I'm in good company. Thank you for the work that you're doing. So I appreciate.
Thank you,
All right.
Jodi,
You take
so
care,
much.
dear.
All
Bye
right, take
bye.
care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jodi.
Thank you.
Once again,
Wow.
I know it's always
Wow.
wow is right.
Well, I
Uh,
don't know what to say. I'm just, my head is buzzing right now.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Beautiful
wow.
lady. Beautiful
Oh
lady.
my gosh, she
Yeah.
is so amazing.
So, of
Yeah.
course, we're going to take you through this next part, how to use BioTouch for PTSD. And just so you know, the research shows BioTouch regulates cortisol levels and
I,
enhances immune system responses.
I'm
And
telling
that's a
you.
key to what happens that's with PTSD. And so
Yep.
we know this can work. Consistency is what's important. Doesn't cost you anything. You carry your fingers. So let's move right into it. Bev's going to teach us the few sets of points. If you need the workbook, go to justtouch.com/workbook. You get that free for a month. And if you want it later on, all you have to do is become a member, and it's always available to you as a member. So take it away, Bev, and I'll be the little
Okay.
techie back here.
All righty then. Okay, so we always like to go through some basic information because we're always having new people join us, and some of you have not really, you're not don't know what BioTouch is. So we always kind of like to give you a little introduction. If you have the workbook, we always have that first page is just a little overview of the condition that we're going to present. And then we're going to move right into, in the workbook, it will be page 6, where we will just go over some basic information to familiarize you with what in the world is BioTouch. So as you can see, it's a simple hands-on healing technique. And we use the first 2 fingers of our hands to lightly touch, we say like a butterfly, on specific points on the body. And literally, BioTouch can address any condition that the body can manifest. So this is a we know it's a very unique healing technique. Part of that is because we're going to tell you every single one of us can learn it and use it. So let's quickly go through these 4 bullets just to, like I said, familiarize yourself. The first one, BioTouch is easy to learn. Well, it is. These wonderful workshops, we put these together because we are addressing specific conditions that you only need to learn a few of the basic, what we consider the basic sets of points required to address a situation, a condition. We have a full technique, of course, that you can learn through our trainings, but we will go into that later. So yes, it's easy to learn, very accessible. Might not be, it's a little, can be a little overwhelming, but we have everything you need at your fingertips, pardon the pun, to learn how to use BioTouch effectively. And you are effective the very first time that you use it. So it's a complement to any healthcare program. Indeed, it is. It's not only a complement to whatever else you may want to do, whether that is working with your doctor, a specific diet, you're going to have surgery, anything you're doing, other modalities, anything that you are doing as a healthcare program, BioTouch can complement and actually integrate into and enhance that whole healing journey for you. So it's non-invasive, very simple to use, very effective. And every one of us, I'll say that again, every one of us has the ability to practice BioTouch with each other. There are no levels of ability. Here we go. Everyone is effective. The very first time that they touch, you are effective. And that's because we know that BioTouch is innate in all of us. The ability to learn it, to use it, it is innate because it is based on compassion, caring, and love. And that is who we are. That's our nature. So you don't require any special talent or knowledge. You don't even have to have a knowledge of anatomy. We have our own way of helping you to find those points on the body. It is just so easy to pick up and so worthwhile. This is something that all of us can integrate into our everyday living for each other. It requires no special preparation or a belief system. You do not have to prepare yourself to love another person. You might not think so. You can be having a really cruddy day. But when you touch another person, you become present with them. Everything, it just breaks down all those barriers. And all you are is just being honored by being in the presence of another human being, caring for them in their stress, in their pain, and their suffering. So there is nothing of a belief system that is going to get in the way. You don't have to prepare your space, or you don't have to prepare and against whatever you think is negative or positive. None of that is required. You just simply, here we go, practice BioTouch. You wash your hands. We actually recommend washing your hands before you use BioTouch. It is one person touching another person lightly on the skin. That is the definition of BioTouch. So it takes two people. And of course we get, can you do it on yourself? Our answer is, well, if you do it on yourself, that is not considered BioTouch. It takes two people present with each other to do that. If you can reach those points in that set, can it hurt? No. But we do not know. We never guarantee, we never give results or anything like that. It's the body. The body's the healer. So we're using the first two fingers of each hand, lightly touching on the skin, and we're going to hold each of those points in those sets 6 to 8 seconds. It literally can be practiced anywhere, anytime, on anyone, anywhere. I don't know of anything else you can actually say that. We have many practitioners who do that, wherever they may be. Somebody needs, you just step up with those two fingers and you can help somebody in that moment. So BioTouch is here, and it's all here for us, all of us now. So we are going to go ahead and start with that. Paul, was there anything that you wanted that I've forgotten at this point?
In a minute, I'll talk about when we get to the grief.
Okay. He usually has his thing to say. So this page with terms, this is actually in our manual. We don't usually go into this in the whole term list, except for the first two, which is that relationship that I had earlier referred to. The associate, this is the person who actually performs the procedures, actually does BioTouch. It's the one who is giving BioTouch. So we use the term associate, and it's interesting because in the dictionary, the word associate has two meanings. One is one often in company with another, implying an intimacy or an equality. This is one of the most amazing things about BioTouch. Like I said, it breaks down all of our barriers and brings us into a true relationship. We are both equal in that, the associate. and the recipient, which is, of course, the one receiving. But what we know about biotouch is in this perfect relationship, both are giving and receiving equally. It's crazy, but it's true. That's what happens in love, which is what we say biotouch is here to offer all of us a sense of loving and caring for each other. Okay.
All right, so before we move on, if you'll notice, the pages are going to be designed. There's 2 pages to what we call a set. As you'll see here on the greeting, there's a page that has drawings with numbers, and the second, and a little synopsis of those points. And on the second page of each set is a detailed description of where those points are found, and there's photographs there. And on each page, you'll see there this little purple that says click here to watch video. That is a link that takes you to the videos that we're going to watch here in the class. So, and the words in that video are exactly the same as the words that are in the description that's written. So it's very, very easy to learn this, especially with this PDF file that you can get and put it on your computer or your phone or your tablet.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great tool. Okay, thanks, Paul. All right, so now we're going to begin teaching the couple of sets that we feel are, it's like anything else. Here, we're going to give you the basics, but with everything else, there are always things and other sets that you can add to helping someone with PTSD. So the greeting is the one set. No matter what else you're doing, you will always begin with. You must do the greeting. And the reason is because it really opens the body to receiving biotouch. So this is kind of a setting the relationship of healing between the associate and the recipient. It brings in a harmony. So we are going to do what Paul just mentioned. We're going to watch the video of someone, of an associate, giving the greeting to a recipient.
The greeting is always performed at the beginning of each session. It's the only set that uses one hand and the only set that indicates which hand to use. The greeting is performed with the dominant hand. If you are right-handed, use your right hand. If you are left-handed, use your left hand. The greeting is made by touching at point 1, which is in the fleshy area just below the bottom of the breastbone or sternum. Hold this point for 6 to 8 seconds. Then, with the same 2 fingers, touch point 2 on the back. To find point 2, look for the big bone at the base of the neck. From here, move 1 to 1.5 inches to the left. This is point 2. Hold this point for 6 to 8 seconds. More than one associate may work with a recipient provided that all of the associates perform the greeting. If the associate or the recipient leaves the session, or if someone who hasn't done the greeting touches either the recipient or the associate, the greeting must be reestablished. Then the session may proceed from where it was interrupted.
Okay. And as we all heard, the greeting is always just one hand, the dominant hand. I did not say that, but I know it's did on the video, so I just wanted to reiterate that. It's very important.
What I also wanted to mention here is if you noticed in that video, it was a family doing it together.
Yes.
And Jodi talked about how BioTouch allows the family to work together.
Oh, gosh, I'm telling you. Yeah. PTSD happens at all ages, doesn't it? Yes, in the family. Okay, let's move to the next set, the headset. This is where you can begin with PTSD. It's a mental condition, as Jodi pointed out, but some of the other things she mentioned, the chemical, hormonal pathways, the neural pathways, those things that can change. This is a very, very interesting set to use because it relates to the brain. And Paul, I just wanted to ask, in the very beginning, she was talking about the medulla at the base of the skull. Was that what I heard, the fight or the flight that she kept referring to? Well, isn't that just point number A of the headset on the back? Right? It's right at the base of the neck, right at the base of the spine, of the skull,
Right.
in that indentation. That's
Well, I remember we were taught once that the whatever goes in the front of the back, they're in
Yeah.
disconnect from one another,
right,
and
through the
you
brain.
don't know where you are in time and space, and that's our first set, A and A, correct?
I believe it was your wife that pointed that out to us.
Right. So,
Yeah, A and A right through the head. Okay, so let's go ahead and watch the video of the headset.
The headset can be used to address conditions related to the brain. There are 4 steps in this set. In step 1, use through fire to touch points A and A. Point A on the back of the head is in the center of the neck at the base of the skull. Point A on the front of the head is at the center of the forehead, where the forehead begins to curve to the crown. Step 2 is performed in crossfire with the fingers of each hand touching on opposite sides of the head. Hold at X, which is in the indentation beside the neck muscle at the base of the skull. It is the same as point 1 of the back set. On the opposite side of the head, touch points 1 through 5. Points 1, 2, and 3 are on the ridge line formed where the skull curves up toward the crown. Point 1 is above the outside corner of the eye on the ridge. Point 2 is above the front of the ear on the ridge. Point 3 is above the back of the ear on the ridge. To locate point 4, move down the head toward the base of the skull to a horizontal indentation approximately 1/3 of the way down from the top of the ear and 1 to 1.5 inches behind the back edge of the ear. Point 5 is opposite hold point X at the base of the skull. Point 5 now becomes the new hold point as points 1 through 5 are touched on the opposite side of the head. In crossfire, touch point 1 above the outside corner of the eye on the ridge, point 2 above the front of the ear on the ridge, point 3 is above the back of the ear on the ridge, point 4 is a horizontal indentation approximately 1/3 of the way down from the top of the ear and 1 to 1.5 inches behind the back edge of the ear. And point 5 is opposite hold point X at the base of the skull. Step 3 is performed in matching fire, touching points 1 and 1, two and 2, 3 and 3, 4 and 4, 5 and 5. Finally, in step 4, place the open palms of both hands on the head covering points 1 through 3. Be careful, don't let your hands touch each other.
Okay, and the last set we're going to share with you is the stress and anxiety, which is perfect for PTSD because, as Jodi was mentioning, this is a mental and emotional condition. And so this stress set is very, it's very easy, only 2 points as you're going to see, but very effective to use to help the body to just deal with all that anxiety and stress that comes with PTSD. So let's go ahead and watch the video.
The stress set may be used to address any manifestation of physical, emotional, or mental stress, as well as anxiety and shingles. Hold at X, which is in the fleshy area just below the bottom of the breastbone. It is the same as greeting point 1. Then with the other hand touch points 1 and 2, which are the same points as in the heart set. These points are found by imagining a line running from the notch at the top of the breastbone to a place on the left breast where the nipple would be on a youth. Divide this imaginary line into thirds. Point 1 is at the top of the first third. Point 2 is at the top of the second third. These points may be touched repeatedly, and remember to touch each point for at least 6 to 8 seconds.
There you have it. It's very simple.
Very simple.
Now, in the workbook I was looking at, we have the neck in there too. There must be 2 workbooks out there, but these 2 basic sets of points, that's all that's really needed. And then you can do some neck work, but always local work. Again, we're just giving you the bare minimum that we find can be effective based on what Jodi was just talking about.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Perfect.
You can always add the metabolism set if you're dealing with a whole, system orientation, or you want to assimilate even more of if you're doing medicinal care, the metabolism can help you assimilate that.
Absolutely.
That you need. So there's numerous things. And again, if you have any questions,
oh my gosh,
you just contact us. There it is right there on the screen, office@justtouch.com. You can call us 520-323-7951. Go to our website, justtouch.com. There is no reason why you can't learn BioTouch.
I tell
It's out there.
We're making it so easy.
Yes, and we want to make sure that you can use it with your loved ones and yourself. And you don't have to talk about it with somebody. You can just do it. You don't have to make, I'm going to help you, or just to do it without even expecting results is even fascinating. It becomes magical. It's a magical technique.
You actually, everyone out there that's hearing this tonight, you have something now that you can help a friend, a loved one, anyone with PTSD or anything else.
Yes. And just go to our website. There's dozens and dozens of other health condition workshops we had. And again, if you have any questions, contact us. We do these workshops the 4th Thursday of the month. We have another one coming up in January. Join us for that. If you want to get on our email list to get information about when the workshops are happening, just go to justtouch.com. Just give us your email. We'll put you on the list.
Yep. Absolutely.
It's very accessible. Bev, thank you. We want to thank Jodi again for her wonderful presentation at greengoo.com. And we'll see you all next week.